All right, now we're going to talk about supporting connective tissue, and we're going to talk about cartilage and bone. And by the way, this is part 3 of the connective tissue video lecture. Now, we're going to talk more in depth about cartilage and bone when we talk about the skeletal system, so I'm not going to talk about development or go into too much detail about these two types of tissues. But I just want you to know a little bit about them. So cartilage has an extracellular matrix that's a firm gel. So it's going to be even more firm than the viscous extracellular matrix that we were talking about with the loose connective tissue. And then we have specialized cells that are called chondrocytes, and these are the ones that are going to synthesize and secrete this matrix of a firm gel. And there's a lot of big words like chondroitin sulfates and proteoglycans, and all of these things are what we're going to talk about a little bit later. But one thing that you need to know for now is that cartilage is avascular, which means that it doesn't have its own blood supply. So in order for our chondrocytes, the cells that make up the cartilage, to get oxygen and nutrients, and in order for them to get their waste products removed, they rely on diffusion from blood vessels that are found in other tissues and membranes nearby. And that is the main reason why cartilage is so slow to heal. All right, so let's first talk about one kind of cartilage. This is called hyaline cartilage, and it is the most abundant kind of cartilage that we have in our body. As embryos are growing in the uterus, their skeletons are not fully ossified yet. They're not all hardened up like bone. They start off as hyaline cartilage models, and we're going to talk about that later on as well. But hyaline cartilage is characterized by very closely packed collagen fibers, so it's very, very tough. And the matrix that the chondrocytes secrete is a very slippery, bluish white glass-like substance. And if I can get my hands on a cow femur bone, I can show that to you later on when we study our skeletal system. But in the adult body, you're going to find hyaline cartilage, especially in between the bones of joints or articulations. And because of that smooth surface, like the head of the femur will glide nicely in the socket of the pelvis to allow us to have pain-free movement. But we're also going to find hyaline cartilage in our rib cage. So the bony ribs don't articulate directly with the bony sternum. They're actually attached to the sternum by some hyaline cartilage, so that when somebody is doing CPR, you have a little bit of give here on that rib cage. Otherwise, the bones would just shatter, and then you could cause some pretty decent damage. That can still happen if CPR is done incorrectly, but you do have that little bit of give in the rib cage because of the hyaline cartilage that is found there in between the ribs and the sternum. Another kind of cartilage is called elastic cartilage, and this contains a lot of elastic fibers, as you would expect from the name. And just like before, elastic fibers have stretch and recoil, just like a rubber band. And so this is a really good thing, right? Because if it didn't, then your ears would be bent in all kinds of different shapes, and so would your nose whenever you woke up from sleeping for the night. So that is where you'll find elastic cartilage. And then if you read the picture here, you'll find some other examples on where you would find elastic cartilage in the body as well. We also have fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage is going to be found again within the intervertebral discs, also between the bones of the pelvis. and also within the knee joint. So the fibrocartilage is very tough. The matrix has very little ground substance, so this isn't like squishy cartilage. It's very tough because it contains many collagen fibers that are interwoven with each other to provide for strength and resilience. And that is our last type of cartilage. So now let's just talk for a very brief moment about bone. Bone is the last type of connective tissue for you to know. There's a very small amount of ground substance, and the ground substance that is there is calcified, which means that it is hardened by the mineral calcium, which is found in another fairly large molecule, which we'll talk about later. But it does contain collagen, so your bones do have a little bit of give, and so they can withstand some pretty great pressure before they actually break. And the reason why they're able to do that is because of the collagen that's present inside of this bony matrix. Now, just like in other types of connective tissue, those protein fibers, because remember, collagen is a protein, that is synthesized and secreted by the cells that live within this matrix. And the cells are called osteocytes. Now you're like, okay, so if the matrix is calcified and hardened, then how do cells live in there? Well, these osteocytes actually form a little hole for themselves. They're called lacunae, and the osteocytes live inside, and that's where they grow, and they perform their duties in order to keep the bone healthy. And now you're probably like, well, is bone avascular? Because how are these cells going to live if everything is calcified already? Well, we do have some tiny little canals that are called canaliculi, and these canals contain tiny blood vessels that are going to carry oxygen and nutrients to our osteocytes and remove osteocytes' wastes away from that area and then out of the bone. So yes, bone does have a blood supply. All right, so that is all that I have for you for our connective tissue lecture. Thank you very much for watching all 3 parts. I hope that it was informative, and I hope that you learned something interesting and new. And I'll see you in class. Bye.